Thank you, Comrade Lawson, for joining us again on Sahara TV.
It's my pleasure.
You recently visited the Nembe oil spill in Bayelsa State, and there's been a serious lamentation about the endless crude oil spills in that region, this has been described as one of the biggest disaster in the Nigerian petroleum industry. Now, from your perspective, what do we know so far about this spill? Could you tell us based on your recent observations?
Well, I'm delighted to have been part of that team, and I'm also delighted that, and I must first and foremost commend the works that have been done even by Sahara TV over the last couple of weeks over this oil spill issue, because from the moment this happened, the company responsible, AITEO, just like every oil companies in Nigeria, have made series of attempts to cover up what has happened in Nembe, but we are glad that we still have dependable media like Sahara reporters and all those other responsible media organizations that have taken it upon themselves to report this. I was privileged to be in Nembe for 2 days, alongside some other friends from the media locally and internationally. And what has happened in Nembe can simply be classified as an environmental genocide against the people of that place. I want to say this, that from the history of oil production in Nigeria, we've had records of oil spill in one community to the other, particularly in the Niger Delta area, owing to activities of oil exploration companies, vandals, and the like. But I want to put it on record here, and I stand to be contradicted, that this is perhaps the largest that has been experienced in any part of Niger Delta as far as oil spillage is concerned. What we witnessed showed that not less than 5,000 barrels of crude oil was discharged into the environment of Nembe, particularly into the rivers, of Bayelsa State. It is tragic. Let me tell you that it is tragic because the survivor, the livelihood, the existence of people of Nembe and other communities in that area, depends on the waters. They live, that is where they live. They live around the waters. They survive on the aquatic, life within the waters. The businesses, their schools, their movement, their transportations are all on that water. And we had to travel. And for the first time in my life, rather than riding the boat on water, we rode the boat on oil to Nembe. That is how tragic that incident was.
That's serious. That is really, really serious. How far has it spread as we speak at the moment?
Well, we are glad that, as promised while we were on the site, that in 48 hours there will be a stoppage of the leak. That was achieved by the indigenous company, which was eventually contracted after the failure of those multinationals to stop the leakage. But the point we are now...
So what you are saying is, in essence, that the recent statement 5 days ago by AITEO that it has stopped the whole
It's confirmed.
It's confirmed.
Yes.
Please go ahead.
Now, where we are now is the attendant consequences of what has happened. What is on the ground now in Benue, in Nembe, is more than what has happened. What has happened was in a situation whereby there was leakage, from the OMA 29, oil well, and over 5,000 barrels spilled into the water. But what we have on the ground now is the life of the people after that incident. For over 35 days, there was this pillage uncontrolled, occupying virtually the length and breadth of the axis. When we visited those communities, people were forced to stay at the jetties in their various communities because it becomes even very dangerous for you to travel on those waters because it's already occupied by crude. At some point, we have to turn off our mobile devices because they are radioactive, and we're advised that it could trigger flame. So that is how dangerous life has become in Nembe as I speak. You can imagine communities who can no longer cook because they have to cook with firewood, those who have to cook with gas, because from the step into your, the jetty, into your apartment, is already occupied by this leak, hydrocarbon resources. So that is why I said the stage now is even more dangerous than the initial stage which witnessed the leakage from that oil well. Where we are now is what really demand a state of emergency at that level if we are going to be taken serious as a country.
Now, let's look at the events or what happened before this report actually came out. There's been controversy about when the leak actually started. The community, I mean the company itself, AITEO itself, claims that it started on November 5, but the communities actually said that it actually started on the 1st of November. Why this controversy, and why is AITEO not being transparent as far as this is concerned?
You see, what AITEO has done is synonymous to the practice of major players in the oil sector in Nigeria, because this is a country where the oil multinationals are bigger than government, are bigger than the people. They have become so empowered that they have constituted governments on their own, terrorizing the people in the name of oil exploration. Let me tell you that November 1st and 5th was not even the first time that particular oil well would experience leakage. 2 years ago, precisely in 2019, that same oil well had a similar scenario, even though a very minimal one that was quickly curtailed. So it is not the first time that that particular spill was happening in that particular area. And it is uncharitable, in my own view, for AITEO to begin to debate when this leakage started or not, when the life of the people were at stake. You see, even before that November 1st, people within the community, there is this culture of engaging youth within the community to serve as surveillance, team patrol members and the likes, by these oil companies that engage them to monitor pipeline and the like. There have been reports to the various communities across that, region that they've been hearing from the nozzles, around that oil well, that something has been easing out, and they've raised this concern and they communicated, the oil company, and we heard it on from reliable sources during our visit, that these companies, including the managing director, discounted and disregarded that security report, and they waited until November 1st when these nozzles blew out and this massive spill occurred. And between November 1st and 5th, that it came to the attention of the world, a lot has already been discharged into the waters. That is one of the, like I said, it's the main source of livelihood of the people of Nembe and the surrounding communities in Bayelsa State. So it is uncharitable for the company to begin to debate when this leakage started or not. If it had been 5th, were they able to block it on 6th? Why did it take over 30 days? You understand? Before this could be stopped. So it is uncharitable, and you see, rather than being sympathetic to the cause of the people whose life has been violated by the action of this oil company, AITEO has been going all around, engaging in propaganda, employing machineries, even within the communities, to distort the realities on the ground. The realities on the ground is that the community is presently experiencing something that will take years of recovery. And the process, as I speak to you, have not even started.
So from what you have just said now, it's not clear when the leak actually began, and the authorities, AITEO itself, did not notify the relevant authorities with regards to what happened there. But are there any official confirmation from authorities as regards what caused the leak in the first instance?
We were on the site, we got to the platform, and we spoke with engineers, mainly Nigerian engineers, who were working to secure the oil well, and were made to understand that that particular oil well had 2 nozzles that controls the flow, and that was where the problem occurred. That from the edges of the 2 nozzles, there was a leakage, and it eventually exploded, and it has to take a very long process of replacing the nozzles on both ends before the leakage can be closed. Now, after that, they have to start, a lot of chemical processes to diffuse the pressure, and also seal, when necessary, the oil well itself. So these are the fundamental realities that we saw on the ground. But unfortunately, the company, as we speak this morning, has not taken responsibility and is not speaking about how to address the aftermath of this unfortunate incident.
What is your assessment of the response of government and their regulatory agencies with regards to the oil spill itself?
The event of the oil spill in Nembe, for anyone who witnessed it, or for those of us who have been there, reinforces our belief in the need for true federalism and resource control.
Why do you say so?
What happened in Benue shows that even though that incident was happening at the backyard of the state chief executive, the governor, he had no control whatsoever in determining what happens at that point. In actual fact, the relevant agencies of government that can take decision on that spill are either located in Port Harcourt or Abuja. And this is happening in Bayelsa State. Not only that, as at the time, the over 30 days that happened, state government have to wait on the National Emergency Management Agency, which never came. They have to wait for the Minister of Petroleum from Abuja to take decision or to direct AITEO on what to do. This governor of the state does not even have the power to direct, what happens at that point, because the control and management of the oil, industry is under the purview of the federal government. How do you sit in Abuja and control the fortune of a people in the rural part of Bayelsa, Rivers, or Delta State who are directly affected by the operations of these oil companies? If this had been under the control of the state government, it would have been a phone call away from the governor to call the management of that company from the moment that it started. It would have been easier also for the state to deploy its own resources and work with such companies to mitigate against such incidences and the damaging effect it's had. It would have also been possible for the state to set up machineries to begin the process of clean up and doing all the necessary remediation to ease the condition of the people there. But today the people have to wait on Abuja, the people have to wait on NOSDRA, people have to wait on the Ministry of Environment in Abuja, people have to wait on NNPC or whichever authorities in Abuja before anything can be done. And that is why we keep re-emphasizing that until we decentralize this power and deconcentrate power from the way it is and empower the component states to be able to do some of these things, we'll continue to have a repeat of what we have in Nembe, which is very, very unfortunate.
We also had a report that the federal government itself does not have a spill prevention body. We were told that they only have the NOSDRA, which you mentioned, the National Oil Spill Detection Response Agency. When we tried to get across to them, they said they do not have the resources to do what is supposed to be done, as they are not well funded as a federal government agency. Isn't that ridiculous?
NOSDRA is just one of those agencies created, maybe by an act of the National Assembly to empower the boys, to put it that way. Because if you look at the agency that is as strategic as that, it does not have the personnel required, it does not have the resources, it does not even have the equipment, the infrastructural resources needed to do its work as dictated by the enabling act that set it up. So that agency just exists mainly on letterhead, or in some offices where allocations are given and shared, but it does not have the capacity to actually embark on the core objective of its establishment. And that's very unfortunate. And that is why, as we speak, the oil, the communities or the state will have to rely on these same oil servicing companies or their collaborators to get this environment sanitized and correct some of these abnormalities that have been imposed on the people of those communities.
You actually talked about this earlier in terms of the responsibility that the oil company has taken in terms of resources and financing for the cleanup. What responsibility has the AITEO Group actually taken as far
as we speak this morning? All that we have seen the company doing is to embark on some ridiculous propaganda distribution of noodles, bread, biscuits, and all those things that would not really have a long-lasting impact on the people. What the people of Nembe, requires now is a system, a process that will return life to those communities. A system that will ensure that they are able to go back to their markets, to their fishing businesses. A system that will ensure that they can cook, in their balcony and not get caught up in flames. So these are the fundamentals, not all these noodles, biscuits, rice and
what you are saying,
rice and bread distribution. The company has not.
For the sake of our viewers,
Yes.
what you are saying is that it's untrue what ITEO ITEO Group actually said, because they said they're giving people relief materials in form of compensation. Now, what you are saying now is that
the biggest compensation, the biggest compensation they have given the people is a rice, noodles, and bread, and not those ridiculous palliative. What the people require is not bread and beans. It is, restoring life back to them. It is cleaning up their environment, restoring, their livelihood. Their main occupation in that part of Nigeria is fishing. It's a very large fishing community that spread up to the Atlantic. As I speak with you, the oil spill into, River Santa Barbara has extended to the Atlantic. So you can see the damage, that it is beyond bread and beans and rice that ITEO is calling palliative.
Now, you've touched on it earlier, but for the sake of clarity, what is the immediate and long-lasting impact this oil spill is going to have on the communities, and what are the dangers that is going to pose for the residents of the area, with regards to the environmental degradation, the economic impact on their livelihood, and what are these implications?
It's going to be a series of chain effects. It is not going to be just a singular reaction from the hazardous state of their earth now. People, because for the few hours we spent on those platforms, we understand how difficult it became, even bathing. At that point, yes, it was difficult. That is number one. Number two is that if urgent measures are not taken, we are going to be creating another industry of youth restiveness in that region, because their youth are involved in fishing and all those aquatic, activities, both transportation and the like. Meaning that when there is no job for them any longer, they will return to oil bunkering and pipeline vandalization. The youth restiveness will return. Then the women and children are going to be faced with a series of hardship that not even bread, indomie, and rice can appeal. Now, look at, to restore that environment, there must be an urgent, commencement of cleanup process. The cleanup will not bring an immediate remedy, but it will ease, the situation. It will ease the pressure on the aquatic life. It will begin to restore, some sanity into the environment, even though it's going to take a long process. But if we don't start now, we are prolonging the agony of these people. We are prolonging their suffering. And I think the Nigerian state must be interested in this, because, like I said, this is one of the biggest in the history of oil spills in this country.
Majority of Niger Deltans have actually opposed offshore drilling, and because of the fact that even the infrastructures are aging and the pipeline facilities are aging, and there are fears and concerns that there are going to be more oil spills in the future. Is it high time to put an end to offshore drilling in that region? And secondly, I also like you to, based on what you've observed, can't the community, the people of that region, explore legal angle as far as these actions are concerned?
Well, to start from where you stop, the people and a lot of environmental advocacy groups are already contemplating, legal procedures that has to be taken to compel this oil exploration company to work, because experience have taught us from Ogoni, to every other places that until it is legally taken up, these companies are not usually ready to take responsibility for their actions, and that is why we are not ruling out the possibility of an immediate, legal process to compel this company to take responsibility for this carnage. But on the other hand, I think the Nigerian oil industry, laws that are being reviewed periodically must look into the direction of, the abolition of the, offshore exploration of crude oil, and considering the fact that not only are the equipment becoming obsolete, there is always this tendency that operators pay less attention to the maintenance of these infrastructures, and it's becoming too dangerous for communities where these infrastructures are located in the name of oil exploration. The people must come first in every business, in every endeavors. And if you don't put the people first, you put profit first and business first, and that is why we continue to have hostilities around the region against these oil exploration companies.
Finally, comrade, what is the way out of this disturbing scenario?
I think I want to restate that we must decentralize the over-concentration of authority at the center. There is need for proper monitoring and enforcement of this industry. The oil industry, you must agree with me, is one of the most corrupt establishments that have existed in this country. And not only corruption, the level of indiscipline and disregard around the operation of these oil companies calls for serious concern. And the only way we can begin to reduce these excesses is by ensuring that the states now have control, the local communities now have control, over some of the activities of these companies that are coming to explore crude oil around their communities. Then they will begin to see people as being part of, the productions. They will begin to see the need to respect, the right of the communities. Because as it stands today, all that is needed to be respected by these companies is the authority of the minister in Abuja, not any damn person, where the oil, installations are located. Very unfortunate.
Comrade Lawson, thank you very much for your insightful perspective.
It's my great pleasure.
Ashibaba.